1950. But my question is, I noticed the journal that comes with your membership, and Cassandra, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this was about a couple of years ago, they had a whole journal focused on reparations. So my question was about how do you all feel about reparations in terms of the whole focus on abolitionists? I wanted to get your views on that.
Just throw out that
And let me remind you that we got about 7 minutes left, so before we get into that whole discussion. Anybody want to take a shot at her?
Well, I'm going to take a shot really quickly. Before people start really talking about slavery, they should deal with the Jim Crow era, because it's there that you're on the most solid footing, because there were distinct violations of the law. And it's interesting. I do know that Ogletree is pursuing that, but the whole issue of reparations should really be that while we have been under equal protection of the law since the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments have been passed, we have seen a systematic refusal by states, even by the federal government at times, to honor the law, to follow the law. And I think about, for example, over the last few years, Norfolk State University received funding, a little bit of funding. For 75 years of underfunding, the state refused to actually fund Norfolk State at the level it was supposed to fund it. The state awarded Norfolk State $5 million and then counted that $5 million against it for the next 5 years. Now, $5 million for 75 years of underfunding is not a settlement. And so that is, to me, an example. The same, Jackson State University got $100 million for their 70-some years of underfunding. So, you know, when you have this kind of situation, reparations, to me, we should look at it that way. But you have some people, as soon as you say reparations, and they think they've won the lottery, and they hear ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And that is not what reparations is all about, any more than affirmative action is about giving opportunities to Black people who are not qualified to be at a university or be in a position. That's not what reparations is about. It's first of all about America acknowledging that it failed to follow its own law, and that it systematically discriminated against its own citizens, and that it did so with malice and forethought. And that you have to have a policy in place that's more than 4 or 5 years to rewrite what you created for hundreds of years.
I want to ask one last question of the panelists, and you can wrap it, because this will be you all's final statement to the audience, but I want you to respond to this. Eric, you said that ideas, mores, the way things are entrenched in people. And we see that over and over in terms of people trying to change attitudes. They say you can't legislate an attitude. What do we need to do, and especially with so many young people in the audience who may or may not be, this audience obviously is engaged because they're here, but there's so many young people who are not engaged in their history, in knowing what's going on. You have a lot of kids who say, well, slavery, that was back then, that has nothing to do with me, that wasn't my family, that was a long time ago. How do we change the entrenchment? What do we need to do to start changing the attitude so that eventually we can really bring some true harmony to this country? And I'm going to start with you, Eric, and work that way. Okay.
Just point of clarification. Oh, you mean entrenchment?
I'm talking about, like when you were talking about how your grandmother looked down because that was a law, that was a way that things were done. And so that's entrenched inside of her. Each generation kind of takes on some of that as we move forward.
Okay. Well, first of all, I guess this is the last time I get to speak. I'd like to thank WHO for putting on this event as a long-time public.
Before you get a minute, go ahead.
I tell my students all the time, public radio has done wonderful things for me in my life as a long-time listener. Started listening in middle school.
Thank you.
And still enjoy the Harrison Keeler shows and things of that nature. My kids with the good, wholesome cartoons that are there. But thank you again for the program. And my check is in the mail for support. But to answer your question, it really starts with education. You know, and I think about my upbringing, whereas it's not just education from the school, but it starts at home first. You know, I grew up in a home with a mother and father that preached education. We were at home every night. We had dinner together every night. You know, at one time my father had to take on a night job, you know, to help the family make ends meet, but there was still order in the home. Then we had a circle where we had a very strong church setting, which I believe that the church itself, especially in the Black community, is really the backbone of any person coming out of the Black community and the Black community itself, because it allowed for many things. It allowed for the pulpit, for the preacher to educate his people about things that are spiritual, things that are natural. It allowed for a display of talents. It allowed for individuals to have leadership positions that normally would not have it in society, and therefore building self-confidence. So education in my church was preached and was pushed. And it was very different because coming from a Protestant Pentecostal background, you know, that really wasn't the main thing to do, but they pushed it. And then also from the unschooling point, this secular education.
But it starts from the home.
Starts at home, and then finally, if I can add this, the community within itself. You cannot produce a good product if the surroundings do not allow it to do so. If you have stores that are selling more malt liquor than they are selling milk, fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, it's not going to produce anything good. If you have an area that is dilapidated, an area where there is no economic development, is not going to produce anything good. So whatever you are influenced by, your environment dictates who you become as a person. That's what you're going to get.
Okay.